Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all good. I'm joined by my mum today again.
Hello. You're going to be fed up of me by the time we're out of lockdown, that's for sure.
So I brought mum on my channel today because she has recently written and self-published a book. So I just thought, while we're in lockdown, I don't know if people are thinking about writing books, but I thought that she could just talk about sort of the process that she went through to, well, having the book.
Having the book. Do you know what? It's a good idea. Yeah, I never thought about it yet, but in lockdown, given how much time we've got, if somebody is thinking about a book or they've got the book idea already, then yeah, they've got plenty of time to be writing it.
Yeah, definitely. So, what made you want to write a book?
So, okay, so I'd been thinking about writing a book for a while, and I had had a couple of goes at books on different topics. So I guess there's something for me in terms of like when you feel quite passionate about something and you think that you can put some material out there that will really help. So in the same way, I guess that with your YouTube channel, you put videos out that you think actually people will find this really useful. That was kind of what it was for me with the book. So I'd had a go a few years ago, but probably only gotten about a third of the way through on a couple of other books. The one I was writing with somebody else. But the timing didn't seem right on that one. So for me, this book, which is more around kind of like my own personal experience in like the corporate space, I think as a topic was easier to know that I would definitely finish it, and also that I knew enough about it to actually finish it because it was my own story, my own experience.
Yeah. And the book is called Smashing Stereotypes.
It is.
So why did you feel like that was something that you needed to like put out there?
So as a title and why I put it out there, so my experience, I'm an accountant, my experience is, nearly 30 years in corporate life, in very big corporates, qualified as an accountant a long time ago, worked at one of the big four, and through my whole corporate life, I was often the only female and usually the only black female in the room, in boardrooms, in management conferences and that sort of thing. And although whilst I was in that situation, I didn't really tend to focus on it too much because I think that if you do, it kind of knocks you off your stride. So now that I was kind of getting to the end of my corporate career, I thought, you know what, it's time for me to maybe just reflect on that and kind of just write my experiences of how I managed being the only woman of colour in a room most of the time. And I just thought it would be really useful for other people, that are kind of like similar to me, or they don't have to be women of colour. They could be, it could be that they're the only gay person in the room, the only Asian, the only whatever it be. Do you know what I mean? Because we all have those kind of hang-ups. And so it was kind of written just to help anybody that's feeling, I don't fit in, how can I get on in this space? Yeah,
definitely. Okay, so if you want to hear more about sort of the book and what's in the book, then head over to Mom's channel. She's got a video over there. But today we're just going to talk about sort of the process.
Yeah, because there's two aspects of the book. There's talking about the content that's in the book, which I did it at the book launch at Waterstone. So we filmed the Q&A. So I think that's probably the best place to go to kind of, if you want to find out more about what's in the book and, kind of my inspiration for what's in the book, there's more over there. But yeah, today just really wanted to do something on the process because actually I learned quite a lot.
Yeah.
And just really happy to share it.
Fab, so tell us what you learned.
So where to start? So this is going to be quite an in-depth video, as in-depth as I can do within the time. You might want to grab a pen and paper. There's a couple of resources, websites and podcasts that I'm going to mention that I think are invaluable. So yeah, let's go. A lot of this information is out there for free. A lot of it you can, a bit like a lot of kind of like educational, kind of things, you can pay somebody to kind of like help you. Obviously I don't do that, I'm not experienced enough to do that, but I can certainly share my experience of the detail.
Yeah.
So for me, the first question, it's like the first question you asked me actually, the why. I think you've got to be clear on why you want to write the book.
Yeah.
Which I guess is the same with anything, so thinking about you and your YouTube channel, you've got to be clear on why you want to do it, otherwise you will run out of steam.
Yeah, definitely.
So I've started with the why, in terms of why you want to write the book. I'm going to have to refer to my notes because there's so many stages in the process of writing it. So so some people, you know, want to write it just because they kind of want to get things off their chest, so it's a bit of therapy. Some people want to position themselves as a bit of a thought leader and a bit more of an influencer. Some people write a book specifically to get clients, so they might want to get consulting or coaching clients. And some people write the book because they think they've got a really good story to tell and they actually want to make money from selling the book.
Yeah.
And they're all really different things, so it's really important to kind of get clear on why you're writing it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, so what are you going to write about and who is it going to be for? And I think it's really key to kind of understand that, basically, because that then determines the next thing, which is how long is your book going to be. So once you've got all of those things, you start to decide whether you're looking at like a 100-page sort of very slim book, which I know a lot of you know, there's a lot of people going around at the moment that are like, oh, I'm a bestseller, you know, and really, well, you've got it different spectrums. Some people literally have only done an ebook that's basically like a PDF that they send out. Then some people have done like a 100-page book that they kind of see as the minimum that they need to kind of have it as a decent book, and maybe they just want to use it as like a lead magnet into their other business, right? I started off with I'm just going to write a 100-page book, you know, that should be sufficient. And then once I started, and because I was reading Grant Cardone at the time, which was the 10x rule, I just decided that was just a really naff goal. Naff is a really naff word, but I just decided it was a really rubbish goal, and I thought, if you're going to do this, do it properly. And I thought, you know, if you're going to write a book, especially one that is so important to you and has your story, write it properly. And that made me kind of like expand the word target and expand my, I guess, you know, increase my expectations of myself and increase the ambition around the book. So I set myself then a word target of like 200 pages, so 55,000-ish words. So that was my target. So yeah, being really clear about, you know, what it is that you're doing and kind of what you're aiming for is really important. So once you've got your word target, obviously then you got to write the book, which is kind of like the next stage. So you've got your word target. I sort of started with a bit of a brainstorm around the chapters. So the chapters effectively give you the structure of the book, and the chapters are effectively, it's you can look at it two ways. It's either a way of breaking down what it is that you're going to say into sort of like manageable chunks, and we are mainly talking about non-fiction, obviously, because my book is non-fiction. So the chapters give you the structure for either just breaking it down either chronologically, but for me the chapters were more around what are the key messages I want to get across through the book, and that basically became the chapters. So I determined the chapters, and then I started writing in the chapters. And I wrote, in terms of how I physically wrote the book, I actually wrote it on Google Docs. So obviously Google Docs is free, so it's not Microsoft Word or anything like that. The reason I used Google Docs was I wanted to be able to access it anywhere at any time. So with it being in the cloud, it kind of meant that if I was on the train, or, you know, if I was in bed and just wanted to grab my iPad because I felt like writing away, it's easy to do that. If you're sort of writing and you literally only have it on your laptop, that kind of restricts you at times. You'd have to have your laptop with you all the time. But because I was doing it in Google Docs, I could literally just whenever, even if I felt like just doing some on my phone or something, I could do it.
It takes a barrier away then, if you can only like write at a certain time. Because sometimes, I don't know if like you ever got this, but like you might just be feeling really creative and like ready to write, but if you haven't got like something to write
the device,
then it's going to be like gone.
Exactly. So that for me was like using Google Docs was just that made it a lot easier. Basically, it meant I would stick to it. And I set myself a word target of 1,000 words a day. I didn't generally stick to that, but you know, you set yourself a word target and you're at least trying to force yourself to write at least a few hundred words a day. So I set myself the word target and then just basically started. And it took me, in terms of writing the book, it took me about 4 to 5 months to actually write the book. In terms of getting to a first draft. Now, the next stage that I'm going to talk about, because I think it's there that you have to stop and decide this. You might have decided this before, but it's whether you're going to self-publish or whether you want to try to get a traditional publisher.
Yeah.
I mean, things have changed a lot, and the reason that a lot of people self-publish is because it's so much easier to distribute books yourself, so to get books out there. So back in the day, when there were like, you know, publishers that had like big printing houses, back in the day, the only way to get a book out was to have a traditional publisher who would physically print that book for you and distribute it. Obviously with Amazon and other like online platforms and stuff, you don't need that. So that's why a lot of people now are just going down the self-publishing route, because that distribution barrier is not there anymore. So that's why self-publishing is so accessible. So you've got to decide, are you going to self-publish or are you going to try to get a traditional publisher? Generally, the way that you could get a traditional publisher is through what's called a literary agent. So it's an agent that specialises just in basically getting you a deal with a publisher. And that's the way that most people get them. You can get some deals direct with a publisher. The best website that I would recommend to get like a list of literary agents and more advice about it is a website called Jericho Writers, which is a UK-based website, but they also cover UK and US. Okay. The guy that set up Jericho Writers, I can't actually remember his name now, but he does write mainly fiction. So a lot of his advice, certainly in terms of the marketing and the strategy, is very much based for fiction writers, but his understanding of the world of traditional publishing and agents and all that is brilliant. And he's got a massive database on there of all of the literary agents. The other thing I would say, in terms of if you're going to try to get an agent, there are quite a few agents that are looking for, you know, more diverse voices. So they're looking for, you know, people of colour, they're looking for women, they're looking for just like different stories basically. So, you know, it is a road to go down potentially. I thought about it, and the reason that I decided to not go down that route, and I did reach out to some agents, the main reason I decided not to go down that route is I wanted to publish it fairly quickly. Yeah. And if you go down the traditional route, it tends to not be a very quick process. So it can take a good couple of years between kind of getting a publisher and even getting your book launched. And also you give up quite a lot of control of the book. So they can do things like they can change the title. There's just lots more, you know, you don't have full creative control basically if you go down that road. But obviously if you do get an agent and it's traditionally published, there is a bit more kudos, and you do get the support in terms of PR and a bit more marketing, whereas when you're self-publishing, you absolutely have to do all of that yourself. So that's kind of the main difference. So I chose the self-publishing route. So the next step for me was to get an editor. Now you don't have to pay for this, I guess. You could just get maybe a friend that you know that maybe reads a lot and their English is really good.
Yeah, they're like good at grammar.
Yeah, and they're going to be really honest with you, because they have to be really honest with the feedback. But for one, I didn't want to, and I have got a couple of friends that fell into that category, but I didn't want to ask them to have to commit that much time, because it's it's a big time commitment. And obviously I'd kind of raised the aspirations around the book. So there is a brilliant website called reedsy.com, so it's reedsy.com, which is basically where you can go to find lots of people in the publishing world. And these are really experienced people. So they are people that have worked for, there are a group of publishers that they call the Big Five publishing houses, including, you know, Penguin, Puffet, you know, all of those kinds of big traditional publishers. And a lot of people that work for those publishing houses are on Reedsy. They do like freelance work and consulting, so they're not necessarily cheap, but on there basically you can find good editors and you can find good book cover designers and things like that, and book publicists. So I used Reedsy to find my editor. So I found an editor. There are two main stages of editing. It's probably a little bit more, but I'm just going to focus on the main two that I used. There's something that's called a structural edit, which is basically when the editor tells you whether the structure works. And it's structural and developmental. So the editor's going to tell you whether the structure works. So do you need to move the chapters around? Do you need to chop some chapters out because they're weak? Which I was told that. So I had some chapters that were quite weak that had to go. I had a couple of chapters that were just a bit too left field, and they sort of detracted from the core message of the book, so they had to go. And then there were a couple of chapters that had to be combined because they were sort of like related and were almost conflicting. And then there was a chapter towards the end of the book that, and I think this was the best piece of advice my editor gave me, was to bring that chapter right to the front because it was the strongest chapter. And I think some of that's because sometimes you get lost in writing and you get so into the detail that you can't actually, you need somebody else to stand back and really kind of look at the book and kind of take that objective view, which is the benefit of an editor. And she told me about putting that chapter first, and when I read it back, it almost brought me to tears because it was like she was absolutely right. You know, absolutely was the strongest chapter. So the editing process, as I think I've said before, was brutal. Like, they are brutally honest. Like, it's the harshest feedback you're ever going to get in your life, but you kind of need it.
Did you ever feel like, when she gave you feedback, did you ever think like, nah, like, that's not right?
100%. 100%. I think it's kind of natural that you get a little bit defensive, and I guess it's the ego, you know. As I know we talk a lot about like Eckhart Tolle and all that. It is absolutely the ego, because your ego takes a complete battering. So when you know you put your heart and soul into this piece of work, and then, you know, if somebody tells you that something isn't very strong or you haven't made a point very well, your first thought is to just like not want to take it. And I think particularly, you know, there were times when I sort of felt, you know, did my editor get me? You know, does she get me? Does she get the point that I'm making? But you know what? It almost doesn't matter if they get you or not, because their job is to make sure that the book is of quality for whoever picks it up off the shelf. So it's not to do with do they get you or not. It's just, are they going to make sure that you have got a quality product where you're putting your point across as clearly and concisely as possible. And once I kind of got that in my head, then it was a lot easier to deal with the notes, of which there were pages.
Like, I'm being attacked.
No, exactly. You know how it feels at first. You kind of get really defensive.
Cool.
It's certainly a process to go through, I tell you. Okay, so after the edit, and you could actually potentially do this at the same time, but I sort of did it in kind of quite linear. So after the edit, you need to get the book cover done. Before getting the book cover done, one of the things I did, which quite a few of the self-publishing websites say to do, is to get like a launch team. So like they call it a street team, or like a focus group of people that can help you kind of get the book out there and maybe read it in advance and give you feedback and stuff. But they can also help you choose the cover, which is why I did it. So I set up a private group on Facebook with about somewhere between 10 and 20 people, and I started getting the cover made. So I used two websites. So first of all, I used Fiverr.com, which I've used a lot anyway, and we use a lot for all sorts of things, and it's quite cheap. But the quality of the cover I got back was rubbish. It was really bad. It was bad. Like,
was that the one where like it had your face on and you'd already told him not to?
Yeah.
Or was that a different one?
It was just bad. It looked really amateurish. It looked really, really amateurish. And also the thing is, even though I was self-publishing, you don't want, well, I certainly didn't want the cover to look like a self-published book. You know, you want it to look like a sort of book with some kudos. So I scrapped that one. And then I went to a website called 99 Designs, which I'd never used before. Have you come across 99 Designs?
No, not before.
So I think I've maybe vaguely heard of it, because I think you can get logos done, and also it's basically a graphic design website. But the difference to Fiverr.com, so whereas on Fiverr.com you just go and you choose one freelancer, on 99 Designs you run it like a competition. So I ran a competition for the covers. So if you show the covers, because so basically the way that it works is you run a competition. This is the one that I like. You run a competition, and basically the designer, you just put it out there. You put the brief out there. You say kind of like what styles you like. You say a bit about what the book's about, and then basically then the designers just start sending you like initial concepts, like design concepts, and then you sort of narrow it down, and then you choose a short list, and then you choose the winner. Now, the focus group liked that cover, so if you show that one, that's the one that the focus group really liked, and we kind of worked on it, and they liked the fact that like the text was coming out of the smashing, so it's kind of the you know, the image kind of like represents what it's doing.
Yeah.
I loved this one. So we were doing you know, we were kind of doing this thing, and they all loved that one, but I really loved this one. So I decided that I would have both. So you can do that on 99 Designs, you can pay for more than one as winner. This one, I just absolutely loved it, and it followed the brief like to the letter. And the guy that designed this, it was his first concept, and he just nailed it from the outset. He read the brief really well and just nailed it. So I decided to have two, because I knew that I was going to have a paperback and a hardback, and because hardbacks, you know, they're a bit more special, so that's why I had the cover that I preferred on the hardback. I have thought about changing the cover for the paperback and seeing whether it will sell better, and that might be something that I'll do, because you can do that quite easily on Amazon and stuff. So
cool.
So that was the process of the cover. Okay, you've got your cover, you've got the book that you've written, the manuscript. So how do you then get to a physical book? So I'm just going to talk through that really quickly. So first of all, in terms of formatting the book, so formatting the you know, the thing that you've written, you can do it yourself, and there are like templates. So Amazon have got templates, and a lot of the other websites have got templates, or you can get somebody on Fiverr.com to do it, and that's what I did. And it literally cost me like 20 quid. And the guy that I got, and I mean, there were like countless like corrections and all sorts of things, as in like when I changed something, he would just correct it really, really quickly. But he basically did all of my formats for the ebook, for the hardback, and for the paperback. So he did everything, and he did it as PDFs, as Word documents, everything. So to me, that's really good value, because that would have taken me hours and hours to do. So personally, I would never sort of try to do that yourself. So once you've got all your electronic files, you're now ready to put your book out there, right? There are some real technicalities, and I won't go into everything, but one of the first decisions that you have to make is whether you want your book only to be on Amazon, or whether you want to sell through other channels. Now, I had my book launch in Waterstones in Birmingham. The only way that I could have had my book launch in Waterstones is if they could physically order the book. Now, surprise, surprise, Waterstones do not buy their books from Amazon. So in order for you to get your book into a physical store like that, you pretty much have got to not just publish on Amazon. You've got to publish through the distributors where the bookstores will buy their books. Okay. So it's quite complicated in the back, but there's a couple of key distributors that you need to know about, and I'll give you the name of a website that kind of covers all of that. I had to, I won't go into ISBNs because I think that's a bit too complicated. So basically, the website and the resource that probably was my biggest help in terms of how to publish, where to publish, all of the technical stuff around getting your ISBN number, which you need for your books and things like that, was one called The Creative Pen, and it's PENN. The lady that has that website is a lady called Joanna Penn, and I must say, in terms of her content, both her blog and her podcast is probably the best quality content I've seen online in a long time. Like, her podcasts are literally like over an hour long, and they are like proper shows. I mean, like proper like scripted full-on shows, and the detail that she goes into is absolutely incredible. Like, I literally even sent her a personal email about her advice on whether to stick with Amazon or go wide, and she actually did reply. And she has thousands and thousands of subscribers worldwide, and she's written lots of books on how to publish, and she's also written fiction books as well. So really experienced. I mean, that's the one thing I would say. There are lots of websites out there about self-publishing, and there are lots of people selling self-publishing courses. The fact is, you can get all of this stuff free online, and she is a really good example of a brilliant website with so much free knowledge and free resource. So in terms of publishing, in terms of how to get your physical book out there, you know, so I did upload onto Amazon. So most people know about Amazon printing on demand. So Amazon will print your paperbacks on demand. The company that prints your hardbacks on demand is called Ingram Spark. So you basically upload to Ingram Spark. They then actually push the hardback through to Amazon for you. But they also push the hardback through into the wholesalers that bookstores buy from. And that's how you basically get your hardback out there. There are other websites that I won't go into because it's literally a massive long list. But if you go on the Creative Pen, Joanna Penn actually explains which websites you need to upload onto to get your book onto like e-stores like Barnes and Noble in the States and all kinds of, it's a massive, there's a massive opportunity, but there's a lot of like sort of learning and stuff like that you have to do about it. So that's the physical book. The other thing that I did was the audiobook.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't do the audiobook, and I don't really know why, because I think after you've put all of that effort in, narrating the audiobook is much, much quicker than obviously writing the book.
Yeah.
Because then you've just got to read it. Bear in mind, so my book is just over 230 pages. I narrated the whole audiobook in one sitting, so one full day. I didn't think I'd get it all done in one day, so I booked a couple of sessions at like a local like podcast studio, well, it's like local Brum Radio, and but managed to get it all filmed, all recorded in one sitting. So it took about 7 hours, I think, of solid recording. I then got it edited on Fiverr, so I found an editor on Fiverr. He was really, really good actually, because he was really experienced, so it was nice using an experienced audiobook editor. And that's kind of pretty much it. So once you've got your audiobook narrated, obviously you've then got to upload that to the different websites. Again, the Creative Pen, because she will tell you everything about publishing. So and this isn't sponsored clearly by the Creative Pen, but that's where I would definitely go to that. And then in terms of launch and marketing, then, so we're nearly at the end of this. Leah's quite pleased because she's been absolutely bored to tears in this video.
I haven't.
In terms of the launch and marketing, I want to talk first about the fact that you've got a lot of people at the moment, they're out there saying they're Amazon bestsellers, right? And I've even helped somebody become an Amazon bestseller, because you can use hacks basically to do it. You can, well, not hacks, but you can use, lead magnets and emails, and you can play around with the categories and things like that, so that you can get yourself as a bestseller in one of the categories if you know what you're doing. And there's a guy actually called Rob Cubbon, Cubbon, who's really good in terms of online businesses. He talks about selling merch online, all sorts of things. And it was him that I first kind of saw the tips around getting bestsellers. So it can be done, but I just kind of decided I didn't want to go down that road for this book. So the launch resource and the launch expert that I really, really liked, and again, there are lots out there. What I would say about all of the self-publishing blogs and websites and courses out there, you've really got to look at their results.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them out there who, they may have literally only written one book themselves, a bit like me, and then they've gone and set up like a self-publishing blog, and then they're charging people for like self-publishing courses. So just seriously, it's a bit like if the 997
I
is
was
the world.
literally just about to say it's like the property world.
Yeah, and
no tea, no shade. But some people get one deal and then they start selling mentoring. Rude.
And a lot of the self-publishing courses, they are like $997 or £97 or whatever. So there's a lot of that out there. So just beware. The guy whose website I found after seeing a few of these, thank goodness I didn't actually pay for any of them. The guy whose website I absolutely loved, and I can't remember how I found him. I think I was looking for podcasts and stuff that were more on non-fiction. And there's a guy called Tim Grahl, and his surname is spelled Grahl, and he's got a podcast called The Book Launch Show.
Okay.
This guy is the real flipping deal. He's the real deal. He's also got a book called Your First 1,000 Copies, which I've just downloaded again because I remembered that I was supposed to read that. And I still need to do more work on my marketing. But I guarantee that if I hadn't read his book, I don't think I would have had that book launch in Waterstones.
Yeah.
He's got a couple of different strategies that he talks about, and he does also do like a paid sort of done for you service, but he gives away so much free content in terms of how to do it. But the reason that I sort of really took on board what he was saying, he has worked with hundreds of authors and has literally had hundreds of New York Times bestsellers, right? So he is the real deal.
It's not a joke.
And he actually had, at one stage, he had 5 of his books that he was working on the marketing for in the New York Times bestseller list at the same time. Right, so this guy knows what he's doing. Right, so that's why I went to Tim Grahl. So, launch and marketing. There's different strategies, and I'm not going to go into it because it really depends on your book, the type of book, and it also depends on whether you've already got a following at all on social media. So, in terms of the Amazon bestseller hacks, and a lot of the advice that's out there is based on you not having any following, nobody knowing who you are, no social media presence or anything like that. And you know, I knew that I had a little bit of a social media presence, and certainly for my target audience, which was LinkedIn, in the corporate space, I had quite a healthy following.
Yeah.
So actually a lot of the self-publishing advice didn't really apply. So basically Tim Grahl, and the reason that I liked his advice is because his advice covers the marketing and launch whether or not you've got a following. So it's not just all of the, he does talk about email marketing and lead magnets and, you know, capturing email addresses and all of that, but he also talks about how to approach influencers and people that have got podcasts and other publicity. So me, I mean, at the moment I've done a little bit of that. I'm also working with a book publicist, so I actually found somebody that's in PR that specialises in promotion for you know, this type of book, you know, kind of in the fields, and I decided to do that, not just in terms of the book, but also some of the messaging afterwards, which I suddenly realised that having written a book on this topic, that was going to be asked to comment on other things, so I'd kind of gotten somebody to help me with all of that stuff more broadly instead of just the book.
So what have been the main challenges like throughout the whole process?
Challenges, I mean, the biggest obstacle and the biggest thing that people will struggle with is getting the book written. You know, that's the thing, because you'll have a lot of people out there, even some people that are watching this video, they're watching this video. It's a bit like, you may or may not want to put this in, right? But
here we go.
It's a bit like in the property world, we get people asking us really detailed questions about the how of doing a particular strategy, and they haven't even bought a house yet. You know, so they might ask you very detailed questions about a refurb, and they haven't even seen a house to buy. And it's the same with writing a book. A lot of people will be studying, how do I get the book published? The main obstacle is going to be writing the book. That's the biggest task that you've got. Second to writing the book, I think particularly if you're self-publishing, the technical stuff in terms of, you know, uploading the files, making sure they're the right format, the different websites, all of that, that can be a little bit tricky and a little bit challenging, but once you've mastered it, it's such a good skill to have. I mean, I was literally saying about that today, because as I'm now developing other, you know, printed material, so I'm developing like planners and journals and whatever, and because I already know how to do it, some of the stuff I don't even need the guys on Fiverr now to do, because I've got the kind of concepts down myself. I've already got some ISBNs, so the ISBN is like the number on the back, like the barcode number. And when I was publishing this, because I did a bulk buy, so you can buy like 10 in one go, I've got some spare ISBNs. So that literally means that I can just go back on and say, right, I'm going to just fling up a book on whatever, and I've kind of already got all of the collateral I need to print it. So it's a really good skill to have, actually. Once you've been through the process once, you realise that you can then quite easily start to publish more material. So
do you think you'll write another book?
I definitely think I will write another book. I mean, so as I mentioned, I'm working at the moment on some planners and journals, and based on your idea, actually, because you kept on banging on about me writing a journal to go with this book. So I'm definitely going to do a journal for this book. So at the moment, the planners that I'm working on at the moment are more like daily planners for people that have maybe kind of got a specific goal, and they just need something to kind of help keep them motivated and organised and whatever. But for this one, when I do the journal, it's going to be more of a journal for this one. And it's, you know, within this book, there are lots of questions and it encourages you to, you know, really think about things and take action differently.
Yeah.
And so I'd like a journal to actually bring that to life, where people can actually, you know, write in it and kind of workbook stuff. So that's something that I'm definitely going to write. And then I definitely want to do a follow-up to this. I've kind of, you know, floated a couple of ideas around with some people. And something that I've come across recently, actually, which kind of links into the ideas I've got for the second book, is something called, so this one's called Smashing Stereotypes. And I've literally just come across, because I've been reading Sheryl Sandberg's book as part of book club, there's something called the stereotype threat, which I think as a concept I've understood, but I didn't realise it had a name.
Yeah.
And the stereotype threat is basically that when you remember the stereotype that you fall into, you underperform.
Right, okay.
And I think my next book, I really want to, I want it to be about that. I want it to be about how you don't let yourself be held back by the stereotype, which is kind of what this was about anyway, but it's going to be the follow-on, you know, to it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And how do you like cope if you ever feel like, oh, like I just can't write today? Like if you get like writer's block, how do you get over that?
I think that is difficult. I think there is, because you could quite easily get into, if you don't force yourself to write, you could quite easily get into the habit of, oh, I'm not going to write today, and you just never write, and you will literally never finish the book.
Yeah.
Because if you only write when you feel like it, you probably won't finish the book.
Yeah.
Facts. So you've got to get into the discipline of writing, and the chances are, do you know what? The chances are, some of my content, some of my writing, when I just forced myself to write, was probably some of the weaker stuff that got edited out, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's all part of the process, and actually, you know, as a result of kind of pushing through and writing, even though there maybe wasn't anything creative and what came out was a bit rubbish, that still led to you coming out with something that was half decent.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would say you have to force yourself to write. You just force yourself to write in the same way that you force yourself to speak. You know, you don't get speaker's block. In fact, I heard somebody say that on like a course or something. You don't get speaker's block.
Yeah.
So why would you get writer's block? You know.
Interesting. Okay.
and some people do talk about using speech to text tools to write your books. You can do that. I think there are some fairly well-known authors that do that.
Yeah.
I quite like the process of writing, and I think that personally, I think my grammar is better when I write than when I speak.
Right. Okay.
So I actually found it quite. Writing is different to speaking, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, the cognitive process is different.
Yeah.
But you can, you know, if you find speaking easier, you could do that. You know, you can speak into Google. You can do like speech to text. You can speak into Google Docs, and it will convert it into text, and there you've got your first draft. You know.
Yeah. Cool. And what like words of encouragement would you give to people who want to write their first book?
You've just got to start. You've absolutely just got to start, because, you know, even watching this, I would challenge you and say, make this the last how to write a book thing that you watch before you start. Like, literally just start now. Like, let this be the last one, the last thing that you've Googled on how to write a book. Make the next step be writing the book, and then dip into the other resources and stuff. But get the book written.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't get the book written, it's game over anyway, so just get that book written.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for coming on my channel.
You're welcome.
About your book.
Thank you for having me. It was nice actually to talk through the process.
Yeah.
And if anybody has got any questions, they can DM me, but obviously I'm not an expert, so they should probably go firstly to the websites that I mentioned, probably starting with the Creative Pen, because I think she probably has just about everything you need.
Cool. And I'll make sure that I leave links in the description bar below to everything that Mum's mentioned today, so that you can get started. But if you are going to start writing your book, then please comment down below. Like, we'd love to know that. We'd love to see it.
What is your book about? What are you going to start writing about?
Yeah, like, just tell us. So yeah, but thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it as always. Make sure you follow me on Instagram at Leah_Miller, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Your eyes like the sunshine on my face. It's a good night, how it smells nice on a pillowcase. And I'm light on love when I see you walking by. I know that